Lily, thank you so much for traveling to our state of Arizona to tell the story of our founder, Ethel Perce Andrus.
Thank you so much for hosting me.
Without a founder, we have no AARP. Who was this person?
If you were to start with the story of Ethel Perce Andrus, she was born in 1884, which means that she was a woman of the 19th century. And then she would live until 1967, and by the time that she passed away at the age of 82, she had founded an organization that today has grown to almost 40 million members.
What shaped this person? What was her vision, her motivations? What type of environment did she grow in that eventually shaped her and motivated her to do so much and to found these two wonderful organizations?
For Ethel Perce Andrus, the story is that she had two incredible parents. Her father's name was George Wallace Andrus, and he and his wife, Lucretia Duke Andrus, had the two daughters. Ethel Perce Andrus had an older sister by 3 years, Maud. And these parents, in the 19th century of America, wanted both girls to get an education beyond high school. And then they had the family values of giving back to society. The father taught them by example about how service, giving back was important to him and his wife. And both daughters went on to really live that life of service. And then Ethel Perce Andrus grew up in Chicago. Even though she was born in San Francisco in 1884, the father wanted to go to Chicago to attend Northwestern University Law School. And so he took the family to Chicago. So it's not stereotypical to say Ethel Perce Andrus was really shaped by Midwestern values. And while she was in Chicago, she attended a school where there were incredible educators that also taught her that one person can make a difference. She also volunteered at Hull House, which is one of the very famous settlement houses in Chicago, established by Jane Addams. So when you think about all these forces, just like you said, that shaped her, it was family values, the people that she worked with and volunteered with, and then she took everything she learned and shaped her own life based on what they had given her.
What was going on in those days in Chicago that began to create an impression on her about community involvement? What was life like in those days?
In the late 1800s and into the 1900s, Chicago was being shaped by a lot of migration. So it was a city growing very fast by the end of the 19th century. And so you have a family who's living in a city where it's noisy, dusty, and dirty. There are a lot of social ills. So women like Jane Addams, other community leaders, were realizing if they wanted to make social change, positive social change, they themselves had to do it.
Basically, she was a witness of a lot of needs, an environment of immigrants, poor people, the settlement houses. So all these kinds of things are shaping her. They're giving her a perspective, and I would even say a calling.
That's a great way to frame that. It was a calling. What happened was Ethel Perce Andrus attended high school and got an associate's degree. The place that she was attending was Lewis Institute, and it was really visionary. It was technically America's very first junior college. The concept of community colleges now in our 21st century is very important.
Amazing.
Yes, because they wanted to teach students an actual skill. So these students would attend this school, Lewis Institute, and the previous generation had been taught Latin and Greek, but this generation needed to learn a trade. So Ethel Perce Andrus was there, and then she was so good. She went on to, such a good student, she went on to the University of Chicago and got what was their bachelor's degree and graduated from there in 1903. And then because she had such, high skills and was very talented, the Lewis Institute faculty invited her back to join the faculty as an instructor. She would remain there for about 6 or 7 years.
Now, back in those days, was it common for women to to get educated, to get degrees, to become teachers, or was that something more like a challenge?
You're right. Society was very, very limiting at the time. Maybe the only two professions open to women would be nursing and teaching. Mm-hmm. So it's been said by women who knew Dr. Andrus that her sister Maud did go on and get married. But Ethel Perce Andrus, because she wanted a career, chose to become a teacher. And I was told that, women teachers back then, if they got married, if they were going to have children, they could be fired, because the thinking was that the job, a paying job, should then go to the man who would be earning money to keep a family. So in order to become an educator, she made a conscious decision not to get married. She was a pioneer. She was able to become an educator and then also still volunteer and work in, a very poor and very hard part of Chicago. And she did that until 1910, when the family returned to California because of her father's ill health.
Could we say that this was the formation years for her in Chicago? Then she gets her degree. She teaches for I would say about close to 6 years,
yes.
And then moves back to California, where I assume that a lot was awaiting her, almost like the real thing. Now that she had been, if you will, formed, trained, yeah. She must have had already a lot in her. She has seen a lot, so it's almost like she's coming back to put to good use all those good qualities.
That metaphor is perfect. What happened was, as you know, she had to start all over again. When you go to a whole nother city, even though she was originally from California, she had to start reapplying to become a teacher in the school district in LA. But what is so interesting is when you think about a person who is just a natural born leader, she gets back to California in 1910, and we know from California history that she became in 1916, a few short years, the very first woman named to run a high school. Think of that. Not until 1916 would this very big state allow, quote unquote, allow a woman to run a high school. And if you think she just got back to LA in 1910, to be able to rise above the rest of the crowd, be counted as a leader, be known to be effective as an educator, and then to be named the very first woman in that big state of California, that means she was a pioneer and a leader.
Back in those days, in California, what type of environment did she find, in that school?
She was given a school in East LA. It was called East Los Angeles High School. She'd been given a school with a lot of juvenile delinquency. I hadn't realized that in the early 1900s, that was a big problem. And so one of the students said later that, she spent more time in juvenile court sort of bailing out her students than actually at this high school, because she realized these students were not given a lot of potential opportunities. So what happened was she said, okay, East Los Angeles High School, this is not going to inspire my students, because literally down the street was the smokestack for the East Los Angeles brewery. Mm. So a woman who knew the power of words and the power of shaping a vision for students immediately renamed the high school Abraham Lincoln High School. Think of that. A woman who had grown up in the land of Lincoln realizes the symbolism of this 16th president of the United States. So then she sets about turning the school around. She realizes, well, the reason these students were getting into trouble was after school they had nothing else to do. There were, I think, 29 to 30 languages spoken at this school. A lot of what, American schools are facing today. Immigration, diversity, problems with families that were low income. So the first step she did was she created after school meaningful service opportunities, which meant, number one, she started things like Glee Club. Now we're seeing this television show become so popular, Glee. Well, she started drama club, Spanish club, Latin club. She had ROTC on campus. So that got the students out of trouble. And if you think about it, she was there from 1916 to 1944, 28 years. Many famous students graduated from there. In the class of 1926, she had both Robert Young, who would go on to become Father Knows Best actor, Marcus Welby, MD, but also Jose Limon, who would grow up, you know, he's the oldest child of Mexican immigrants. I think there were like 11 children in his family, but she gave him a vocation. He had a passion for the arts, and he would go on to found this incredible modern dance troupe, which exists still to today. And then later on, she would have another student, Robert Preston, who would become a famous actor and would become the star of The Music Man, the musical. So the point was, she gave the students a leg up. She gave them opportunity. As a matter of fact, on the campus to this day, there is a wrought iron gate. And many students remembered that in order to enter the campus, they had to walk under that iron gate. And the woman who knew the power of words had built over the arch of that gate the word opportunity. So the point was, she turned the school around by giving these students a purpose. And then she realized, as many of the settlement house founders realized, you are part of a community. And so she then went to work on bringing in the students' parents. She realized many of them were immigrants, first generation, not really understanding what American life was all about. So she did what we would now call vocational training for the parents. And so this incredible Lincoln High School became this destination, a center of community life. And to think now, if you drive through that section of LA now, the school is still there, and that area taking its name from the school is called Lincoln Heights.
Ethel found diversity in Chicago and diversity in California.
Yes.
She could have just taken a wrong approach, but I think she took the right approach. I mean, isn't that impressive? I mean, the how she embraced both in Chicago and in Los Angeles. She had an attitude of a very positive and a very embracing attitude towards diversity.
You know, David, your work here in AARP Arizona is going to be so key in carrying on Dr. Andrus's vision. I had not realized, and you can teach me this, how diverse East Los Angeles was then and still is now. But if you go to this high school, you can actually see all of the yearbooks. They're still there. And to flip through them from the years that she would have been there, 1916 to 1944, you see how the faces, the students' pictures, were becoming more and more diverse. So in essence, she saw the changing face of America. And I later found out that she did so much to make it an inclusive, inclusive environment, honoring each student's background, but still realizing that together we're trying to build one United States of America, that she would honor their parents. She would bring the parents in to teach about their own cultures. But most important is she realized with the changing face of America that everybody could contribute to American society. And there is a beautiful testimonial to this. As I said, Robert Preston was one of her students. And as soon as he heard, he'd become quite a famous actor, but as soon as he heard in 1967 July that his beloved principal had passed away, he sent the fastest thing then, which was a Western Union telegram. And in it he wrote out, "I've always been disappointed that our large, agglomerate, multiracial world could not function as happily and as well as our small, agglomerate, multiracial high school in Los Angeles did. But then our poor world had no Dr. Andrus to run it." Robert Preston.
We have talked, touched upon different aspects of the life of Ethel, but we haven't reached to AARP yet. So it seems she already did a lot, but the good, I guess, is yet to come, so to speak.